The restaurant buzzed with life. Laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, and soft jazz melodies humming in the background. Golden fairy lights crisscrossed the ceiling, bathing the room in a warm, festive glow. At the center of it all sat a long, polished oak dining table where Lauren and her colleagues gathered to celebrate the company's stellar quarterly performance. The air smelled of garlic butter and seared steak, and a server had just refilled Lauren's glass with a generous pour of Cabernet Sauvignon. This wasn't just another company dinner. Tonight was supposed to be her night. For the past 5 years, Lauren had given everything she had to this place. Her time, her energy, her weekends. While others clocked out at 5 p.m. sharp, Lauren stayed late, fixing problems no one wanted to touch, mentoring junior staff, picking up the slack without complaint. She was the one people turned to when things went south, and her track record of getting results spoke for itself. Her boss, Douglas, had been dropping hints for months. Small remarks in meetings, passing compliments during one-on-ones, suggesting she was next in line for the senior manager position. She had imagined the announcement 100 different ways. Maybe he'd say her name with pride, maybe the room would erupt into applause, and maybe, just maybe, she'd finally feel seen. Lauren had even bought a new dress for the evening. A deep navy blue wrap dress that hit just below the knee, paired with low heels because she knew they'd be standing for a toast. She'd gotten her nails done the night before and even splurged on a professional blowout that morning. She didn't do this kind of thing often, but tonight was worth it. She believed that. Across the table, her coworkers chatted enthusiastically about sales figures, new clients, and vacation plans. Lauren smiled and nodded along, trying to calm the nervous flutter in her chest. She took a small sip from her glass and glanced down the table. At the head sat Douglas, wearing a crisp suit and a smug smile. He tapped his wine glass with a fork, a sharp ting that quickly brought the room to a hush. Lauren's heart pounded. This was it. "Tonight," Douglas began, his voice cutting through the quiet, "I want to take a moment to recognize someone truly exceptional, someone who has shown incredible dedication, drive, and talent in just a short time here at the company." Lauren blinked. Short time? Her smile faltered slightly. "It's rare," Douglas continued, "to find someone who can make such a massive impact in just 3 months." 3 months? He turned toward Brittany, fresh-faced, newly hired Brittany, and grinned. "Brittany, your leadership, your creativity, and your problem-solving skills have truly impressed us. And that's why I'm thrilled to officially announce your promotion to senior manager." "Congratulations!" Applause erupted. Glasses were raised. Lauren sat frozen. Her fingers tightened around the delicate stem of her wine glass. She forced a smile, clapping mechanically while Brittany stood, blushing and thanking everyone. The edges of the room blurred for a moment. Douglas then turned toward Lauren, as if only just remembering she was there. "And of course, Lauren," he said with a dismissive grin, "we appreciate everything you do." That was it. No recognition, no explanation, just a vague pat on the back after 5 years of pouring her soul into the job. Lauren felt a lump rise in her throat, but she pushed it down. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. She raised her glass. "Of course," she said smoothly. "Brittany absolutely deserves it." Douglas nodded, smirking. "She does a lot more than you already, Lauren. You should take notes." The words hit like a slap. A couple of chuckles followed. Brittany looked mortified, murmuring, "Oh, I wouldn't say that," but the damage was done. Lauren laughed along with them. What else could she do? Cry? 'Cause a scene? Beg for an explanation? She was better than that. So she smiled, she drank, she chatted, she celebrated alongside them even as a storm churned beneath the surface. But when the night finally ended and the warm Texas air wrapped around her outside the restaurant, Lauren pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. She opened her email, took a deep breath, and typed. Subject: Resignation letter. Submission: Dear Douglas, please find my official resignation letter attached, effective immediately. Best, Lauren. Her thumb hovered for only a second before she hit send. A rush of something unfamiliar surged through her. Not sadness, not anger, but relief. Deep, exhaling relief. And though the night had blindsided her, Lauren knew one thing with absolute clarity. This was not the end of her story. It was just the beginning. As the whoosh of the email leaving her outbox echoed in Lauren's ears, a strange calm settled over her. The late-night Texas breeze brushed against her face as she slipped her phone back into her purse. The warm buzz of laughter from the restaurant faded behind her, replaced by the soft hum of crickets and the distant sound of tires on asphalt. She stood on the curb for a moment, heels anchored to the pavement as if grounding herself to the decision she had just made. 5 years of loyalty, late nights, missed birthdays, skipped vacations, all sent away with a single email. But the moment she pressed send, the weight that had sat on her chest for years began to lift. The lie she had told herself for so long, that loyalty would eventually be rewarded, finally shattered, and in its place, a spark of something new. Freedom. Resolve. She climbed into her Ford Escape, clicked her seatbelt into place, and stared out the windshield for a beat. Her hands still trembled slightly on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of standing up for herself. The promotion wasn't the point anymore. It never really had been. What hurt was how easily she'd been dismissed. How someone like Douglas, who had watched her hold the department together through budget cuts and management changes, could reduce her to a footnote at her own celebration. But Lauren wasn't the kind of woman who made emotional decisions on impulse. Not anymore. She was done waiting for permission to be recognized. By the time she pulled into her driveway, just past 10:30 p.m., the stars were out in full force. Her neighborhood was quiet, porch lights glowing like fireflies up and down the cul-de-sac. She stepped out of her SUV, heels clicking on the concrete, and walked inside. The house, modest but cozy, welcomed her with familiar silence. She poured herself a glass of water, kicked off her shoes, and sat down at the kitchen table. And then she made another decision. She pulled out her phone again, scrolled through her contacts, and tapped on a name she hadn't thought she'd need again: Ethan Walker. The former CFO, the one Douglas had pushed out last year for not being a team player. What Douglas meant, of course, was that Ethan didn't play his game, didn't bend to ego or cut corners to protect the status quo. Months ago, Ethan had reached out somewhat quietly, asking if Lauren might consider joining his new firm, Walker & Rowe Consulting, once things got off the ground. At the time, Lauren had declined, loyal to the company she believed still had room for her to grow. But things had changed. The phone rang once, twice, and then Ethan answered. "Lauren?" he said, voice low and surprised. "Everything okay?" "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. There was a brief pause. "You sure?" "Absolutely." And just like that, her new chapter had begun. Monday morning. Lauren pulled into the company parking lot at exactly 8 a.m., not to start another week, but to close this one with grace. She didn't need to be here. Her resignation had been effective immediately, but Lauren wasn't one to leave without tying up loose ends. She walked through the double glass doors with a quiet confidence, dressed in a tailored blazer, slacks, and sensible black pumps. Her hair was pulled back, her expression calm. If anyone noticed the shift in her energy, they didn't say it out loud, but they felt it. The front desk receptionist gave her a nervous smile. "Morning, Lauren." "Just here to collect a few things," Lauren replied with a nod. Her coworkers peeked over their cubicle walls like prairie dogs, eyes wide, conversations halting mid-sentence. Even Brittany, seated at her new desk with a vase of congratulatory roses beside her keyboard, looked like she didn't know whether to wave or duck. Lauren didn't flinch. She walked to her desk, her old desk, and began placing her things neatly into a cardboard box. A framed photo of her parents at Christmas. A small succulent plant she'd nursed back to life after nearly killing it during a 70-hour work week. Her coffee mug with the chipped lip that read, "I run on caffeine and spreadsheets." All little pieces of a life that had quietly kept the office running behind the scenes. Then, the door to Douglas's office flew open. "Lauren," he said sharply, "my office, now." The tone wasn't friendly. It was strained, like a man grasping for something slipping through his fingers. The entire floor went quiet. The printers paused. The clatter of keyboards stopped. Everyone heard it. Lauren glanced over her shoulder, then calmly straightened her blazer. She picked up her box and gently placed it back on her desk before turning toward him. "Of course," she said smoothly. The door clicked shut behind her. Douglas stood behind his desk, waving a printed copy of her resignation letter like a red flag. "You can't be serious." "I am," she said, taking a seat across from him. "Why?" he demanded. This is rash. You didn't even give me a chance to explain." Lauren tilted her head. "You didn't give me a chance either. At that party, you knew exactly what you were doing." His jaw tensed. "It's not personal, Lauren. Brittany has been here 3 months," she cut in. "I gave this company 5 years. 5 years of cleaning up your messes, managing crises, and holding this department together with duct tape and coffee. And you not only passed me over, you mocked me. In front of everyone." Douglas faltered, searching for a response. "I'm not here to make a scene," she continued. "I'm here to leave with dignity. But make no mistake, this is not a loss for me. It's a liberation." He leaned forward, a last-ditch effort. "Where are you going?" Lauren smiled, slow and sure. "To a place where I don't have to beg to be respected." She stood. "You'll regret this," Douglas said. Lauren met his gaze without flinching. "Number you will." And with that she walked out, box in hand, shoulders straight, heels clicking confidently across the tile floor, leaving behind the man who had underestimated her one too many times. Lauren's car pulled out of the parking lot one final time, her rear-view mirror filled with the glass facade of a company that no longer held any power over her. As she merged onto I-45, a smile crept across her lips, one of real, unshaken freedom. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about deadlines, meetings, or how to spin one of Douglas's mistakes into a palatable update for upper management. Her mind was clear, focused, alive. A few miles down the highway, she turned off the radio. Silence had never sounded so good. Monday came and went. No alarm clock at 5:45 a.m. No racing through Dallas traffic with lukewarm coffee in hand. Instead, Lauren took time for herself. She walked her dog around the block. She called her mother. She even made pancakes, real ones, with buttermilk and vanilla extract, not just something nuked in the microwave between emails. And for the first time in years, she wasn't exhausted by 10 a.m. That alone felt revolutionary. But by Wednesday morning, she was ready. She stood outside her new workplace, Walker and Rowe Consulting, a sleek mid-rise tucked in a growing business park just outside the city. The building wasn't flashy, but it radiated energy, purpose. It was the kind of place where ideas were born, not buried under politics. As she stepped through the glass doors and into the open-plan lobby, she could already feel the difference. The receptionist greeted her like an old friend, not because she had to, but because she meant it. Lauren, welcome aboard. She smiled. It's good to be here. The elevator ride to the top floor was smooth and quiet. As she watched her reflection in the brushed steel doors, she noticed something different. The woman looking back wasn't weighed down by invisible burdens or self-doubt. She looked strong, centered, ready. Her office was waiting, a real office, not a cubicle stuffed in a corner. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, a sleek cherry wood desk, and a door she could actually close. There were 2 guest chairs, a coat rack, and a fresh notepad with her name already printed at the top. She took a slow breath and let it all settle in. This was hers, not handed down, not borrowed, earned. By 9:30 a.m., she was in her first leadership meeting. Ethan Walker, the founder and former CFO she'd quietly admired for years, sat at the head of the table. When the team finished introductions, he turned to her. Lauren, he said, I want you to take the lead on our new initiative. We're restructuring operations, and with your experience, I know you're the right person to drive it. No hesitation, no hoops, no passive-aggressive caveats. She nodded. I'd love to. Across the table, a few of her new colleagues exchanged approving glances. They didn't know the whole story yet, but they didn't need to. They could already tell she belonged. And from that moment on, Lauren thrived. She poured her skills into building processes that actually worked, cutting out waste, organizing teams, mentoring new hires who wanted to grow. She was no longer just a fixer. She was a builder, a leader, and people noticed. The kind of people who mattered. Just 3 days into her new role, her phone buzzed with a text from Megan, one of the few genuine coworkers she had left behind. Megan, Lauren. It's chaos over here. Brittany's drowning. Douglas is freaking out. He called an emergency meeting this morning and couldn't answer half the questions you used to handle in your sleep. Lauren let out a soft chuckle. She hadn't needed revenge. She didn't need to sabotage anything. She just had to leave and let the truth rise on its own. Megan, again. Oh, and guess what? 3 clients already asked where you went. They're not happy you're gone. It didn't stop there. By the following week, Greystone Partners, one of the largest accounts from her old firm, reached out directly. Their CEO, Thomas Green, called her office personally. I heard you moved to Walker & Rowe Consulting, he said, his voice warm. I want to talk about moving our account with you. We've worked together for years, and frankly, things over there aren't the same since you left. Lauren leaned back in her chair, her fingers resting on the armrest. Of course, Thomas, I'd be happy to talk. By the end of the month, 3 major clients had shifted their accounts to Walker & Rowe Consulting, not because she'd asked, but because they trusted her, not the brand she left behind. Meanwhile, updates from Megan kept rolling in. Megan, Brittany has no idea how to manage the new budget. She's pulling 14-hour days and still missing deadlines. Douglas is losing it. The board is putting pressure on him hard. Lauren didn't gloat. She didn't need to. All she had to do was excel in peace. And the contrast spoke volumes. She often arrived at work by 8 a.m., greeted by a fresh cup of coffee and a team that respected her. Her opinions mattered. Her expertise wasn't questioned. It was sought after. She finally felt like the leader she'd always been, just now with the title and the authority to match. And every now and then, when she checked her inbox and saw another client inquiry or glowing performance metrics, she'd think of that restaurant, the fairy lights, the applause, the moment Douglas told her to take notes. And she would smile. Because now, the only note she needed to take was on how good it feels when you bet on yourself and win. It started with an email. Subject: a proposal. Lauren's eyes narrowed slightly as she read the name in her inbox. Douglas. She hadn't heard from him directly since the day she left, hadn't needed to. Updates from Megan were enough. Word around the industry was traveling fast, and the storm she'd left behind was now full-blown hurricane season back at her old company. But this was different. She clicked the message open. "Lauren, I'd like to have a conversation. I believe we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. If you're open to it, let's set up a meeting to discuss options. Looking forward to your response." Douglas. She leaned back in her chair and let out a short laugh, dry and knowing. The man who once told her to take notes was now begging for a meeting. It was almost poetic. She didn't respond right away. No, she made him wait a full day. She had strategy calls to finish, documents to review, and, let's be honest, a bit of quiet satisfaction to enjoy. When she did respond, her message was crisp, professional, and free of urgency. "Douglas, I'm available for a brief meeting Monday at 10 a.m. Let me know if that works for you. Best, Lauren." No smiley face, no fluff, just facts. She wasn't negotiating, she was observing. Monday, 9:58 a.m. Lauren stepped into the glass lobby of her former company, now a very different place. The receptionist looked up, startled. "Oh, Lauren, I didn't know you had a meeting today." "I'm just here for a quick visit," she said smoothly. As she walked through the open office, heads turned. Conversations stopped. Whispers followed. Some faces looked surprised. Others looked like they wanted to applaud. Even Brittany peeked over her monitor with a look that hovered between relief and dread. Lauren didn't pause. When she entered Douglas's office, she noticed immediately he looked smaller. Not in stature, but in energy. The once confident man with his puffed chest and over-polished shoes now had shadows under his eyes and restless fingers tapping against his desk. The corner office, once pristine, now looked like it had weathered weeks of chaos. "Thanks for coming in," he said, standing quickly and motioning to the seat across from him. Lauren sat, crossing her legs, her blazer buttoned to perfection. "What did you want to discuss?" He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "Look, I'll get right to the point. I want you back. I realize now how valuable you were. Things haven't run smoothly since you left. Clients are unhappy, processes are broken, and frankly, the team isn't functioning without your leadership." She said nothing. Just let the silence simmer. "I'm prepared to offer you a substantial raise," he continued. "A senior executive title, full autonomy over your department, and a seat at the leadership table." She tilted her head slightly, lips pressed into a thin line. "So," she said, calm as ever, "after 5 years of ignoring my work, passing me over for a promotion, and publicly belittling me, now you're offering everything I was supposed to have before?" Douglas's jaw tensed. "I made a mistake." "No," Lauren corrected him. "You made a choice. You chose to humiliate me. You chose someone who didn't even know the difference between gross margin and net profit. You chose ego over experience." "I was wrong," he said, voice low. "I see that now." She nodded, almost kindly. "And now that your company's bleeding clients and your board is breathing down your neck, suddenly my worth has skyrocketed." He opened his mouth, but she cut him off with a wave of her hand. "Let me ask you something," she said, leaning forward just slightly. "If I hadn't left, would I be sitting here? Would you have given me any of this? Or is this only happening now because you're desperate?" His silence answered for him. "I'm not coming back, Douglas." His face fell, but she didn't stop. "I work somewhere now where I don't have to ask to be respected, where my ideas are valued the first time I speak them, where clients follow me because they trust me, not the company name on my business card." "Lauren," he tried again, "think about this. You have history here?" "Yes," she replied with a cool smile. "And that's exactly why I'm not interested." History doesn't mean anything if it's built on broken trust. She stood, smoothing her blazer one final time. As she reached for the door, she turned to look back. "Oh, and Douglas," she said, voice light but sharp as glass. "Next time you promote someone who's done less in 3 months than I did in 5 years, maybe you should take notes." Then she walked out. No anger, no second thoughts, just purpose. By Friday, Megan sent her the final message she didn't even know she was waiting for. Megan. It finally happened. The board voted him out this morning. Douglas is gone. Lauren stared at the message for a moment, then leaned back in her chair at Walker & Rowe Consulting, sipping her afternoon coffee as sunlight poured through the windows of her new office. She didn't dance. She didn't gloat. She just smiled. Douglas had thought she was replaceable. Turns out he was. The message from Megan was short, but it echoed like a victory bell. Megan. It finally happened. The board voted him out this morning. Douglas is gone. Lauren set her coffee cup down on the corner of her desk, the late afternoon sunlight catching the gold trim of the ceramic mug. She didn't reply immediately. She just sat there for a moment, still steady, letting the weight of that message settle. It was done. The man who had once held her career in his hands had been removed from his own empire, not by scandal, not by vengeance, but by the quiet, inevitable consequences of underestimating the wrong person. The company he clung to like a badge of power had let him go, not out of loyalty or regret, but out of necessity. She didn't feel joy. She felt peace. Across her office at Walker & Rowe Consulting, a potted fern she had picked up from a local nursery stood proudly on the windowsill. Her diploma from the University of Texas now hung beside a framed letter from one of their biggest new clients, Greystone Partners, thanking her for restoring trust and excellence to the business relationship. The small things, the personal touches, were finally hers again. Not borrowed space, not temporary. Heron. Her days now started at 7 a.m., not because she had to beat traffic or prove her worth by arriving early, but because she wanted to. Mornings felt purposeful again. She took her time with her coffee, actually reading the Dallas Morning News instead of just scanning headlines. Her team greeted her each morning with real warmth, not performative pleasantries. And the meetings? They were filled with ideas and collaboration, not politics or thinly veiled power plays. At Walker & Rowe Consulting, she wasn't just an employee, she was a cornerstone. Ethan Walker had been true to his word. He gave her full reign over the operations department, and within weeks, Lauren's impact had reshaped the company's structure. Workflow efficiencies improved by 37%. Client satisfaction scores climbed. Employee retention increased, especially among the young, driven professionals who finally had a mentor worth following. Lauren became that mentor. She carved out time every Friday for office hours, an open-door block of 2 hours where anyone could come in, ask questions, pitch ideas, or just talk. It became a hit. Interns who once barely made eye contact now came in confidently with proposals. Junior managers asked her about leadership, not just logistics. People looked to her not out of fear, but out of genuine respect. She wasn't just managing a department anymore, she was shaping a culture, and it wasn't just about business. Lauren started saying yes to the things she had put off for years. She signed up for a weekend pottery class at the local art studio just 5 miles from her house. She went on a hike at Enchanted Rock with her niece. She even started planning a long overdue trip to Oregon's wine country, something she and her best friend had talked about for a decade, but never had the time for. Funny how time multiplies when you're not spending it proving your worth to people who refuse to see it. One quiet Thursday afternoon, as she was wrapping up emails, her phone buzzed. It was a notification from LinkedIn. Someone had mentioned her in a comment. Curious, she opened it. It was a post from a former colleague at her old company. They were announcing their departure and thanking the people who quietly taught them what leadership really looks like, especially Lauren, who showed me that strength doesn't always have to be loud to be powerful. She sat back in her chair, eyes misting. There it was, the full circle, the legacy. She hadn't needed a title or a corner office to prove herself. All she had needed was the courage to walk away from a place that no longer honored her, and to believe that she could build something better on her own terms. And she had. 6 months later, Walker & Rowe Consulting had doubled in size. They expanded into 2 more cities, Austin and Denver, and Lauren was now part of the executive steering committee. Her fingerprints were on everything, from talent development programs to client relationship frameworks. She was no longer behind the curtain, making things work. She was center stage, unapologetically leading. Megan eventually left the old firm, too, and joined Walker & Rowe, consulting as a senior project manager. The reunion felt like a healing moment, a silent nod to everything they'd both endured and overcome. One evening, as Lauren locked up her office, she passed a corkboard in the hallway where the team pinned up little notes of gratitude and celebration. A new one had just been added. It read, "To Lauren, for showing us how to walk away from what doesn't serve us and how to rise when no one's watching. You didn't just leave a company, you built a better one." She stood there for a long moment, reading it again. Then she smiled, deeply, fully, and turned off the lights. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was exactly where she was meant to be. Life lesson. Know your worth and never be afraid to walk away. Lauren's story reminds us of something many professionals quietly carry, the weight of unspoken sacrifice. Years of loyalty, late nights, missed milestones, all in the hope that hard work alone would be enough. But when the applause went to someone else and her name was barely acknowledged, she realized the truth so many learn the hard way. Loyalty means nothing in a place that doesn't respect you. For anyone in midlife navigating career crossroads, Lauren's journey is both a wake-up call and a blueprint. She didn't explode. She didn't beg. She walked out with dignity, chose herself, and proved that betting on your own worth is never the wrong move. Sometimes growth requires closing doors, even the ones you've kept open far too long. Respect isn't earned by suffering in silence. It's claimed by knowing when enough is enough. And in the end, the very people who overlooked her had no choice but to reckon with the legacy she left behind. Because the truth is simple. When you stop shrinking to fit in, you finally make room to lead.